The tranquility of the Bondi dawn was almost unbeatable. The sound of waves gently breaking on the sand, the scent of sea salt, and the coolness of the night air enveloped Marlin as he walked along the shore. The sky was clear, with only a few stars visible, and the moon reflected gently on the calm sea. He wore a sweatshirt and shorts, his feet bare on the cool sand. The city was still, broken only by the gentle breeze from the ocean. Marlin stopped abruptly when something glittered in the sand near a pile of dried seaweed. He knelt down, brushed away the seaweed with his hands, and found a dark stone, the size of a closed fist, with grooves that seemed to form patterns. As he touched it, a strange warmth coursed through his arm, followed by a fleeting image of distant mountains and unknown symbols. He tucked it into his pocket, deciding to investigate later. The next morning, Marlin visited the local library, searching for records on artifacts with ancient inscriptions. The librarian, a woman with gray hair and round glasses, mentioned legends about the Stone of Basica, associated with pathways between realities. He jotted down fragments of texts about extinct coastal civilizations and ancestral navigation techniques, but nothing concrete. As he left, a man in a dark overcoat watched him from afar, jotting something down in a notebook. A few days later, while exploring a path near the cliffs, Marlin found a partially hidden entrance concealed by vegetation. The stone, when pressed against the rock, emitted a click, and a narrow passage opened. Inside, under the dim light of his flashlight, he saw walls covered in markings identical to those on the artifact. In the center of the chamber, a stone table held a map etched with coordinates that seemed to correspond to locations around the world. As he touched it, visions of submerged cities and gigantic structures assaulted him, followed by a whispering voice. The map is not a guide, but a warning. Returning to the city, Marlin noticed he was being followed. A dark car circled his apartment, and anonymous letters with symbols similar to those on the stone arrived through the mail. He decided to seek help from Chloe, an anthropologist he knew from a conference. She listened silently as he explained his findings and showed her an article about prehistoric instruments found on a nearby island, with markings identical to those on the map. "These symbols aren't decorative," she said. "They are instructions. Someone used them for something far greater than we imagine." That night, the two traveled to the island guided by the map's coordinates. Among the ruins of an ancient temple, they found an underground chamber with a replica of the Stone of Basica, much larger, embedded in the floor. Around it, statues of human figures held objects resembling carpenter's tools. When Chloe touched one of the statues, a bluish light erupted from the center of the artifact, projecting holograms of unknown constellations. "They aren't stars," Marlin murmured. "They are passages." Before they could proceed, an explosion rocked the structure, and masked men stormed the site, demanding they hand over the object. Chloe, however, had already hidden the smaller replica in her backpack. They ran through narrow tunnels, guided by the symbols that now glowed on the walls. Emerging on the beach, they saw a boat waiting, with the same man in the dark overcoat aboard. He smiled, revealing a fragment of the original stone in his necklace. "You don't understand," he said, his voice calm. "This isn't about maps. It's about who decides what to remember." The escape lasted hours until the boat ran aground on a rocky cove. The pursuers gave up, but the damage was done. The replica had shattered, and its pieces exhaled a silvery mist that dissipated into the air. Chloe, wounded, murmured about repeating cycles, about civilizations that tried to control what they didn't understand. Marlin, holding the remaining fragment, realized the answer wasn't in the map, but in what it represented, a choice between revealing the past or protecting the future. At dawn, they sat in silence, watching the sea. The artifact, now inert, lay between them. Far away, in a windowless room, the man in the overcoat analyzed the fragment in his necklace, while screens displayed images of the map's coordinates. "It has begun," someone said from unseen. "They have awakened." As the silvery mist dissipated over the bay, the broken piece of the stone revealed a previously unseen detail. Small grooves within its interior, identical to the patterns on the carpenter's tools. Chloe, despite her injuries, insisted on following the trail of symbols, now visible under a faint light that seemed to emanate from the cave walls. Marlin helped her climb a narrow crevice, where the air smelled of damp earth and decaying wood. At the top, they found an ancient structure, partially covered by vegetation, with weathered beams and half-open doors, creaking in the wind. Inside the building, in an abandoned workshop, they saw dusty shelves and a central workbench filled with tools. An elderly man, with wrinkled hands and wearing a faded apron, polished a piece of wood with almost ritualistic concentration. Beside him, there was a simple set of tools: hammers, chisels, saws, with varnished handles and rusted but still functional blades. The box that held them was marked by constant use, with deep scratches and an engraving on the lid that resembled the symbols on the map. Without turning, the man said, "You shouldn't be here." His voice was calm but carried urgency. Chloe approached and noticed that these tools were not ordinary. The engravings on the handles repeated the patterns on the map, and the blades, despite the rust, seemed made to cut something beyond wood. "Who made them?" Marlin asked. The carpenter sighed, dropping the chisel. "They were left by those who understood the stone's purpose. They don't build objects, they create passages." Before they could ask more questions, a crash echoed from outside. The man quickly wrapped the tools in oiled cloth and handed the package to Chloe. "Take them to where the original artifact was buried. The symbols on the blades will reveal the path." He guided them through a corridor to a locked door, where a symbol identical to the replicas glowed on the wood. "Beware those who follow the same map, but only see power." With that, he pushed them out and locked the door. Back on the beach, while examining the tools, Chloe realized that each one, under the sunlight, cast shadows forming parts of the path. Marlin discovered that the stone fragment reacted to the touch of the blades, emitting a low hum that seemed to synchronize with the rhythm of the waves. "These aren't tools," he said. "They are keys." That night, under the light of a flashlight, Chloe tried to decipher the engravings. A chisel had a sequence of symbols corresponding to a coordinate: 34 degrees south, 18 degrees east, pointing to the open ocean. As she wrote down the numbers, a motor noise alerted them. They hid the tools in the sand and saw a boat approaching, with spotlights sweeping the coast. The boat stopped 50 meters from the beach, and 3 men disembarked, weapons in hand. The leader, identifiable by his dark overcoat, walked to the water's edge, holding a device that emitted rhythmic beeps. "You have something that doesn't belong to this world," he said, pointing the device at the sand where the keys were buried. The fragment in his necklace glowed, and the ground trembled. Chloe grabbed the package of tools and ran into the water, shouting for Marlin to follow. The sea, until then calm, churned, forming waves that pushed them away from the shore. The men fired, but the bullets deviated from invisible paths, as if something in the ocean repelled them. When the water reached Chloe's waist, the chisel vibrated, and a blue light erupted on the surface, forming an arch like a doorway. "It's the coordinate," she cried. Marlin dove, holding the fragment against his chest. The pressure increased, but he felt no shortness of breath. Before him, a gigantic metallic structure emerged from the darkness, covered in symbols identical to those on the map. It was a ship, or something close to it, with organic contours, as if it had grown rather than been built. Chloe reached him, gasping, and together they touched the surface. The tools aligned with the symbols, and a passage opened. Inside the ship, translucent walls displayed holograms of unknown planets. A mechanical voice repeated, "Containment protocol violated. Reboot in 3 minutes." The men in overcoats reached the entrance, but the keys formed a light barrier, blocking them. "No one can control this," the leader growled. Chloe ran to the center of the ship, where an empty pedestal awaited. She fitted the tools into it, and the fragment fell from Marlin's pocket, floating until it joined the other pieces. The ship trembled, and the holograms changed, showing Earth from space, with flashing red dots on specific locations. Nuclear power plants, deforested forests, overcrowded cities. "This isn't a map of realities," Chloe whispered. "It's a map of collapse." The voice announced, "Reboot in 10 seconds." Marlin grasped Chloe's hand. "We have to choose." She understood. The keys could reactivate the ship, but its purpose was destruction, not preservation. Letting the protocol continue would mean annihilating everything. Interrupting it, unleashing something worse. With 5 seconds remaining, Chloe pulled the tools from the pedestal. The ship darkened, and the dots disappeared. The beach returned to normal. The men vanished, leaving only the device in the sand. In the distance, the sun began to rise, dyeing the horizon orange. Chloe and Marlin walked in silence to the dry sand. She tucked the keys into her backpack, inert. He held the fragment, now cold and opaque. "They'll try again," he said. Chloe nodded. "They always do." They looked at the sea, where the ship slowly submerged, its forms dissolving into the morning light. Somewhere beneath the waves, the true map still waited, and with it, the question neither of them dared to voice.